Hello, Esme. Let's continue with The Last Polar Bears by that man, Harry Horse. Monday, the 14th of October, somewhere near Iceland, but not sure exactly where, on board the Unthankable. Dear child, we have now been on our expedition for 10 days. Of course, we're not there yet, but at least we are on our way. Once we get there, we can begin to practice climbing and looking for the best route up to Great Bear Ridge. I have never been out on an expedition before, and neither has Rue, but I know that you can't hurry. We have to be careful. Terrible things can happen on an expedition if you hurry. You could fall down a crevasse or get lost in a snowstorm. I intend to do a lot of planning so that things like that won't happen to Rue and me. Rue said she wouldn't have come along if she had known it was going to be that type of expedition, and that she thought we were only going away for a couple of days. I tried to explain that expeditions always take a long time. If they lasted only a couple of days, then everyone would go on one. It isn't like going to the beach for a picnic. You can't come home at night for your tea. All this talk of beaches and picnics put me in a rather sorry mood, and I suddenly missed you all, even Uncle Freddie. I went out on deck. The sun was setting. A gentle wind blew overhead. I wondered whether I was wrong to have come all this way. Maybe the polar bears wouldn't want to see us. Maybe we would get lost in a snowstorm. Maybe. My thoughts were interrupted by the captain shouting at me to batten down the hatches and lash down any loose barrels. I didn't see the hurry. The sea looked so calm. The calm before the storm, whispered the captain. A minute later, there was a growl of thunder and huge black clouds rolled in overhead. Get below, ordered the captain, after I had finished all the battening and lashing. I looked at the sea. It seemed quite angry. I quickly went below into the cabin, as I didn't want to make it any angrier. We did not talk much this evening as we ate our supper. I had to hold on to my plate to stop it sliding off the table. The captain said nothing, though he roared with laughter every time a large wave struck the boat. He drank rather a lot of rum tonight, I'm afraid. He fell asleep in his chair. Rue said that she would steer if I wanted, but I thought it would be safer for both of us to get into bed. We pulled the covers up over our heads, but it didn't keep the noise of the storm out. Another sleepless night ahead. Do not worry, I am used to it. With love, your grandfather. Tuesday the 15th of October, the Unsinkable. My dear child, I was woken in the middle of the night by Rue barking that the ship was sinking. At first, I just grabbed my dressing gown, but I didn't want to be marooned at sea in my nightclothes, so I tried to get dress over my pajamas. I could hardly pull my trousers on. The boat was lurching about so much. Water was pouring in under the door, the cupboards were swinging open, and all my clothes, maps, and equipment lay strewn over the floor in a soggy heap. Rue was running around in circles with a rubber ring around her middle. I managed to get the cabin door open, and we struggled out into the open, into the corridor where we met the captain. He seemed quite unconcerned about the storm and asked us what we were doing. Rue gibbered something about lifeboats and every dog for itself, until the captain wrapped her in an oilskin blanket and popped her in the bootlocker for her own protection. He then sent me back to bed with some tea that tasted strongly of rum. This morning, the storm finally died away. The captain, who had tied me to the bed so that I wouldn't fall out, untied me and let Rue out of the bootlocker. I bore him no grudge, but Rue sulked and said she didn't feel like breakfast. She only ate 5 rashers of bacon, 3 poached eggs, and 7 slices of toast. I went to our cabin, began to tidy up the mess, and spent most of the morning folding, sorting, and drying. When I had finished, Rue poked her nose round the door and asked if she could lend a paw. I feel very alone on this expedition and know that I shall probably end up doing all of the work myself. After lunch, the captain began work on the engine. It seems that last night it took a bit of a pounding from the storm. I'm not an engineer, but I went down to the engine room to see if I could help. I told Rue to stay up on the deck and not to get in any trouble. The engine looked a bit of a mess. Oil was dripping from the pipes and lots of cogs, nuts and bolts seemed to have sprung loose. I picked up as many as I could find and the captain put them back into the engine. For many hours he worked inside the engine, sometimes crawling in so far that only his feet poked out. At last, the final bolt was put back in its place, and after the captain had done a bit more adjusting, he tried to start the engine. He pressed the starter motor. Nothing happened. He pressed the emergency starter motor. Nothing. Then he whacked it with his spanner. Still, it wouldn't start. He even booted it with his foot. At that moment, Rue came down the ladder, tripped and fell on some buttons. The engine roared into life. The captain was amazed and said that it never sounded better. Rue said that her uncle had lived in a garage, and that's how she knew so much about engines. I said that I'd never heard of an engineer dog. Rue said that if there were police dogs, guard dogs, guide dogs, sheep dogs, and rescue dogs, then there were bound to be engineer dogs and possibly doctor dogs as well. A hearty meal tonight, and even the captain in a good mood for once. We all had a game of Old Maid. Rue won 19 games in a row. Very sleepy. We'll write more tomorrow. Your grandfather. Thursday, the 17th of October, somewhere near the North Pole, on board the Unsingable. Dear child, so much happened yesterday that I was unable to sit down and write you a letter. We had another storm and almost hit an iceberg. We see more and more of them every day, so we must be getting closer to the North Pole. This afternoon, we sailed past a small penguin colony. They really are the most amusing creatures. I have done a drawing of them for you. I went up to see the captain. He said that he could smell dry land. I was very excited by this, and I even tried to see if I could smell it too, but all I could smell were the kippers that Rue was cooking in the galley. We had a very enjoyable meal tonight, and afterwards the captain told us old sea tales, some of which I found very unpleasant. Rue added a few of her grandfathers, which I must say are becoming more and more ridiculous. She told us one in which he was swallowed by a whale and lived inside it for 2 years. He even built a little house in there, she said. He escaped at last by climbing out of the blowhole and swam all the way back to his ship. He got a medal for it. Then Rue began another story about how he captured a pirate ship on his own. So I went to bed. If the captain can really smell land, then we must nearly be there. I shall send this letter tonight as soon as I arrive. Can hardly sleep tonight. Too excited. With love, your grandfather. This is part 2 of The Last Polar Bears by Harry Horse. Hope you're enjoying it.